I won the Futurity in 1973 on a mare called Doc's Marmoset. She was a full sister to Doc's Oak, a horse I showed in '76 that ended up being a big-time producing horse, Hall of Fame horse. Of course, she was too. Well, what do I remember most about that night? I remember a lot of stuff about trying to get there. Back in '73, we had 15 cows in a set, and we used rerun cattle for the second go-round. And so it was very difficult to get through the second go-round. And contrary to what they say about the cattle being so easy back then, tried those rerun cows in there with only 15 cows. So anyway, made the semifinals. I was lucky enough to win the 2 go-rounds on her, or the total score, the Edgar Brown Trophy. And I do remember that I only won it by a point, so I was very, very lucky on that. But she was just an outstanding mare. She was very intent on a cow. She was a big-time stopper. I compare her a little bit to the mare that Tag won the Triple Crown on, Chiquita's Pistol. And she was a little bit elevated in her front end, but she would run and hit the stop, right-eared, tried all the time. She did things the other horses don't do. Personality-wise, I don't think there was anything special about her personality-wise. She just bright-eared mare. She was, she liked her job. She wasn't a big pet or anything. She just was just a very nice horse to be around. A lot of conformation. Big, stout hip, short back, good run and stop. Oh, I realized the first time I worked on a cow she was special. All those special horses, they tell you right off the bat. I don't think, and I always said about her and Doc's Oak and Boone Bar and some of those older horses that every time you did something, every time you worked them, they did something special. And you said, might not be perfect, but this horse does things other horses can't do. And she was one of those. The big memories on this mare, and this is be a good trivia, but do you know of a horse in the NCHA that has ever won the old Triple Crown, which was the Futurity, the Derby, and the World's Championship, and never been beat, never defeated during her 3- and 4-year-old year? And there's only one, and that's Doc's Marmoset. But that's kind of an oddity that there's never been another horse that I know of that's ever won the Futurity, the Derby, and been a world's champion. And she also won every aged event that she was in, her 3- and 4-year-old years. So of course, we didn't have a lot of them. We had the Pacific Coast. She won the NCHA World Championship. She was undefeated at the Derby, Pacific Coast, in those aged events. Plus, she won the NCHA World Show that year. And went ahead and I won the World Show on the AQHA on her son, Smart Little Uno, 20 years later. Well, in 1973, that was the second finals I'd ever made there. I showed there my first time in '71, did not make the finals. '72, I made the finals on Doc's Lynx, so that was my first trip to the finals, and ended up 4th that year. And then '73, I won it on her. Everything was special about that night. Anytime you win that deal, but you're in the heat of the battle and you don't really appreciate it or think that much about it until it's over with, until you go down the road. And at that time, I thought, I'll win several more Futurities, and I never did. I won a couple of Super Stakes, a couple Derbies, but never won another Futurity. It's hard to get everything right on Futurity night. I don't know how many times I've made the finals, but I will say that my career at the Snafflebit Futurity at making the finals was a lot more dynamic than my career at the Cutting Futurity. At Snafflebit, I made the finals 7 or 8 years in a row, never missed them, and won once. And I didn't have that good my career at the Futurity was fine, but nothing like the Snafflebit. There's 4 of us have won 2 out of the 3 what I call the major events in the Futurity, Cutting Futurity, Snafflebit Futurity, and the Reign of Futurity. I won 2 of them. Dale Wilkinson's won 2 of them. Bobby Avala's won 2 of them, and Todd Bergen's won 2 of them. I think there's only one tough thing about Schoen and Will Rogers, and that's making the finals. Once you make the finals, it's gravy from there on out. But I've always said, I'll bet against you making the finals at the Futurity until you make them one time. And then I'll never bet against you again, because once you've done it, you'll do it again. I mean, it's for some people, it's a mind deal. It never really was for me. For me, it was just trying to having the superior horses, which when Leon Harrell and I and Reader came along, in the 70s, we had the Dock Bar horses. And of course, Shorty Freeman had them too, and Buster and all that bunch. But back then, Ray Charles could have seen that they were superior horses. And with the judging back then, well, it was tough. It was tough to come in the scene because there was so much politics in there, and the 3-judge system, every score counted, and one judge could judge the cutting, and it was tough. And what did I buy with my share of the winnings? The winnings at that time was right around $25,000, and I'll never forget. I bought a load of cattle from Glenn Cantrell, who Ronnie Rice worked for a while, and in September of the 3-year-old year, I bought a load of cattle, and I think the cattle cost 64 cents a pound, and they said by Labor Day, I bought them in August, and by Labor Day they said they were going to go to $1 a pound. Well, when they had Labor Day, they went the other way. And when I sold them, they brought 27 cents a pound after the Futurity in January, and I used the majority of that to pay for the load of cattle. I lost the money on them. But if I hadn't had the cattle, I might not have had her trained well enough to win the Futurity either. I was kind of getting started where I could survive, because they had Doc's links, that I could survive and put food on the table for the family and survive training horses. But up until the Futurity came around, you couldn't make any money training young horses. There was no money in it. There was no board to show them. You were showing novice horses that were 7 or 8 years old or didn't have a Futurity. So there was no big reason to go ahead and train young horses. You just go ahead and work a horse, and if he showed something, the old timers, they'd have him there, and he'd be a good horse. But it was later on. It was just a weekend show, and then. I've seen many good runs in that arena, and I don't think I can pick a run out that I just said that's the best run I've ever seen in that arena. I mean, I've seen, at the time, considering the cattle, I mean, there's been a lot of nice horses. And, I was there on a horse called Boone Bar in '75, and won the 2 go-rounds, won the Edgar Brown Memorial Trophy, and he got sick and colic the night before the semis and missed the semis by half a point. And he was probably one of the better horses that I ever took the Futurity. I mean, he was a phenomenal horse. But, just the right thing at the right time didn't happen. It wasn't in the cards. Well, for one thing, we get to work fresh cattle on both go-rounds. And in the semifinals, when we had to work rerun cattle, second go-round, that was tough. The judging has changed completely. When we went to the 5-man judging system, it just took not all the politics, but it took a lot of the politics out. And one judge could not control it. You kick out the high and the low. I remember in '76, very few people remember this, but we had 6 judges. We had 3 judges for the first go-round. We had 3 judges for the second go-round. Come finals time for 15 horses, we got to vote for the top 3 judges. And so the top 15 horses got together and they voted, and that was real good. But then the next year, I think it was '77, is probably the same time they went to the bigger bunches and also went to the 5-man judging system. So that probably changed the Futurity as much as anything. And I don't think today that you can find one horse in the Futurity that doesn't have some Dock Bar blood in him. I've kind of looked at that, and I couldn't find. Used to be in the old days you'd find a Paint or Appaloosa that didn't have any, but I don't think today you can find one. At least one that's making the second go-round. So it's changed a lot on that. But the judging's, the cattle, the ground, it's better. Everything's just, it's better.